I didn't expect anything to change that night. Camden was its usual mix of neon pubs and soft drizzle, the pavements glistening beneath street lamps like they always did. I was on my last delivery of the evening, balancing a box of pepperoni on one hand and half a bottle of lukewarm Coke in the other, already thinking about the footy highlights I'd catch before crashing. But then she opened the door. Tall, composed, a silk dressing gown hanging loosely over her shoulders like she hadn't quite made a home from a courtroom. Her hair was swept back, damp from a shower, and her eyes flicked over me with mild recognition, like we'd met before but couldn't place each other. "I ordered this 25 minutes ago," she said, arching an eyebrow as she leaned against the frame. "You lot slowing down these days?" I smiled because that voice, I'd heard it before, not just heard it, recognized it. It had the exact same cadence as the woman who used to argue over parking fines on BBC Radio 4. "Sorry, traffic was murdered down Chalk Farm Road." She laughed softly, more amused and annoyed. "Coming before it goes cold." I hesitated. Customers didn't usually ask me in, not in the posh flats. Anyway, but something about her tone wasn't suggestive. It was casual, routine, like inviting strangers into her living room was just part of her nightly ritual. Inside, her apartment smelled like eucalyptus and something citrusy. Clean, polished, like the person who lived there knew exactly where everything belonged. The walls were lined with law books and framed black and white photos, some of which looked like old protests or marches. "Sorry about earlier," she said, flicking the kettle on in a seamless move. "You must think I'm a right arse. Long day." "No offense taken," I replied, setting the box down on the counter. "I'm Max, by the way." She glanced up. "Max, right? You've delivered here before, haven't you?" "A few times." I paused, watching as she made 2 cups of tea without asking. "You're hard to forget." That got a look from her, half smile, half curiosity, but she didn't push. Instead, she handed me a mug and nodded toward the window. "I like to sit by the view when I eat." "You?" I followed her quietly. From a wide bay window, the city stretched beneath us like a restless maze. Taxis darting down alleys, rooftop gardens lit in soft gold, the London Eye blinking faintly in the distance. "You always this generous with your delivery guys?" I asked, trying to keep it light. "Only the ones who stare at my bookshelf before their shift ends." Caught. I turned to look at her properly now. In the low amber glow of her standing lamp, there was something in her gaze, not flirtatious exactly, but open, calm, like she saw straight to the layers I wore just to survive long days on a bike and longer nights in a flat I barely afforded. I knew then that something was shifting. In me, in her, or maybe in the air between us. I wasn't just delivering a pizza anymore. We ended up sitting by the window for almost an hour that night, me still in my red delivery jacket, her sipping tea in that silk robe like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her name was Sophia, a barrister, just turned 30, sharp as a blade and twice as polished. I didn't know it then, but this wouldn't be the last time I delivered to her. A week later, she ordered again, this time 2 pizzas, garlic bread, and that same half smile. "Busy day," she explained, leaning against the doorframe. "You're not allergic to margarita, are you?" "I deliver it, not worship it," I replied, and she laughed like she'd missed laughing. That second time, I didn't leave right away either. From then on, it became a quiet thing between us. She'd order once, maybe twice a week, always late evening, always when she sounded worn out. I'd bring the food, and somehow, without us ever really talking about it, I'd stay. We'd talk about everything from politics to the worst takeaway reviews we'd ever read. She had a wicked sense of humor, dry and biting, but I could tell it was a defense mechanism. Underneath all that polish was someone tired. Lonely, maybe. And me? I was used to being invisible. The guy on the bike. The background blur. But with her, I wasn't just delivery boy. I was Max. "Do your mates know you hang out with high-powered lawyers after shifts?" she teased once, reaching over to flick something off my shoulder. I shrugged. "Don't really have mates. Not the proper kind. Just blokes I drink with after 5 sides. Sounds lonely, isn't it?" I replied, my voice low. She didn't answer. just looked at me for a long second before sipping her wine. Chemistry wasn't the right word for it. It was slower than that, softer, like something unfolding in the background, waiting for one of us to acknowledge it. We never touched, not properly, but the way her eyes sometimes lingered on my hands, or the way I found myself memorizing the curve of her neck when she wasn't looking, said more than either of us dared to. Then came the weekend trip. It started as a joke. She was heading to a quiet village in Norfolk for a short break. Something about needing air, needing peace. I told her I hadn't been out of London in nearly 2 years, and she said, "Well then, come with me." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "Just mates," she said. "Fresh air. 2 nights. No pressure. You can sleep in the spare room, and I'll even let you pick the music in the car." We left on a Friday afternoon in her dark green Mini Cooper. The motorway blurred past in a mess of wind and motorway signs, and I couldn't remember the last time I felt so light, like I wasn't just escaping the city, but escaping myself. We arrived just after sunset, a cozy stone cottage with ivy crawling up the sides and 2 bedrooms. Except, of course, one had a broken radiator. "I swear it was working last time," she said, biting her lip. "It's bloody freezing in there. You'll catch pneumonia." "I'll manage," I offered, tried to act unfazed. She glanced at me. "Or you can sleep in mine, just for warmth. I won't bite, promise." It shouldn't have meant anything. Friends could share beds. Adults could be mature. But the idea of being that close to her, in the dark, under the same blanket, it sent something skittering through my chest. "I'll take the edge," I said lightly. "You stay in the middle, Queen of Camden." She rolled her eyes, but there was a softness in it, only if you don't steal the covers. That night, lying beside her, I didn't sleep much. I could hear the quiet rhythm of her breathing, feel the faint warmth where our arms nearly touched. Every time she shifted slightly, the mattress dipped, and I caught myself holding my breath like a bloody idiot. At some point around 3 a.m., she murmured something. I turned slightly, just enough to see the outline of her face in the moonlight. "You still awake?" she whispered. "Yeah. I'm glad you came." "Me too." A pause. A long one. Then, "You're easy to be around, Max." My heart thudded once, hard, but I didn't answer. I couldn't, because if I did, I might have said too much. And I wasn't sure yet if she wanted to hear it. The next day in Norfolk was cold, quiet, and oddly peaceful. The village had a sleepy charm. Cobblestone paths, a bakery that smelled like brown sugar, and a pub called the Three Badgers that clearly hadn't changed since the 1800s. Sophia looked different here. Looser. She'd tied her hair up in a messy knot and wore a thick jumper that drowned her frame, the sleeves falling just past her wrists. She looked less like a barrister and more like someone who could vanish into this place without London ever noticing. We walked down a narrow trail near the marshes that afternoon, the sky the color of wet slate. Her hands were buried in her coat pockets, and every so often she glanced sideways at me like she wanted to say something but didn't. "You're quiet today," I said eventually. She didn't look at me, just thinking about Monday, about going back. "Work." She nodded. "Always work." A sigh escaped her lips, fogging the air. Sometimes I wonder if I'm even living or just ticking things off a list. Winning cases, paying mortgages, ordering pizza at 11 p.m. so someone talks to me for more than 5 minutes. My throat tightened. That last bit felt sharp. Personal. We were approaching the water's edge when it happened. The sort of thing you never planned for. A soft crunch of gravel, then a sharp yelp from Sophia. She stumbled on the uneven path, her ankle twisting awkwardly. I caught her just in time, her weight crashing into me with surprising force. "Shit," she breathed, grabbing my arm. "Bloody hell, that hurt." "You all right?" "No. Maybe. My ankle's gone weird." She tried to stand, but winced the second she put pressure on it. I crouched beside her, unsure where to touch. Her skin was cold, her breath visible in sharp bursts. "Come on," I said gently. "Let's get you back." The walk back was slow. She leaned on me heavily, one arm around my shoulders, her body pressed to mine. Each step made her hiss under her breath, and every time she stumbled, my arm tightened around her waist. I tried not to think about how close she was, how good it felt. The sun had already dipped by the time we reached the cottage. Inside, she collapsed onto the sofa, biting her lip as she cradled her foot. I fetched her a cushion, then disappeared into the kitchen to boil water for tea, because it was something to do, and I needed something to do before I said something stupid. When I returned, she was curled up beneath a blanket, her hair messy from the wind, one sock half peeled off. "I feel like an idiot," she muttered. "You shouldn't," I said, crouching in front of her. "These trails are dodgy. You're lucky it wasn't worse." She offered a faint smile. "Still ruined our nice countryside walk, didn't I?" I shook my head. "Wasn't the walk that made it nice." She looked at me then, properly looked, and for a moment, something passed between us, thick and silent and full weight. "Thanks, Max," she said softly. That evening, she didn't move from the sofa. I made us toast and beans, and we watched an old detective show on her laptop. She rested her foot on my thigh without asking, half out of necessity, half out of ease, and I pretended it wasn't driving me mad. I couldn't focus on the show. Not really. I was too aware of everything. The warmth of her foot through the blanket, the occasional brush of her knee, the way her jumper slipped off one shoulder as she got more comfortable. Around 10, the fire started to fade. I stood to stoke it, but she caught my wrist before I moved. "Stay," she said. "Please." So I sat back down. This time, she didn't just rest her foot on me. She curled into my side, head leaning gently against my shoulder. "I hate feeling helpless," she murmured. "But this feels okay." My heart was racing. I didn't know where to put my hand. On her arm? Her back? Nowhere. I settled for letting it rest beside me, fingers twitching with the effort of restraint. "I could get used to this," she added, her voice barely audible. "To what?" I wanted to ask. "Me? Us? This strange quiet where I don't feel like a delivery boy and you don't have to pretend to be invincible?" But I didn't ask. I couldn't, because the truth was I wanted more, and that terrified me. I'd never felt something like this before. The slow, creeping way she made space for me in her world. How it wasn't dramatic or sudden, but soft and constant. But if I reached for it, if I said the wrong thing, it might disappear like steam off a kettle. Later, we both ended up in her bed again. Not because of the broken radiator this time, but because we didn't want to be apart. It wasn't said aloud. We just moved that way. She lay on her side, facing me. The duvet was pulled up to our chins, and the room was silent, except for the wind against the windows. "I used to think feelings were a liability," she whispered. "Made people sloppy, vulnerable. But I don't feel like that when I'm with you." I swallowed hard. My chest was full. My thoughts a mess. "I feel seen, Max. Like I can stop pretending." I reached for her hand beneath the duvet. Our fingers brushed, tentative, slow, before intertwining. I didn't know what would happen next, whether this was a turning point or just another moment we'd dance around. But I knew one thing. I didn't want to go back to being just a delivery guy who stood at her door. Not anymore. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of discomfort. Her bed was far softer than mine back in the flat I rented over a chip shop, but because every breath from her stirred something deeper in me. She lay close, her face turned towards mine on the pillow, lips slightly parted, her fringe falling into her lashes. Every so often, she shifted, and her thigh brushed mine under the covers. The contact wasn't intimate in a deliberate way. It was gentle, accidental, but it was doing things to me. My mind kept churning. This isn't normal. This isn't just mates on a trip. This is something else. And yet, I stayed still, afraid that moving might wake her, afraid that not moving might drive me mad. Around 3 a.m., she stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. "You awake?" she whispered. I hesitated. "Yeah." She gave a soft exhale. "Didn't think I'd end up sleeping in the same bed as my pizza guy when I ordered stuffed crust last week." A smile tugged at my lips, but I couldn't quite laugh. Neither did I. She studied me. There was no playfulness in her eyes now, just something quiet. Careful. I keep thinking, she said slowly, that maybe I drag you into something I shouldn't have. Maybe I'm crossing lines. I turned onto my side to face her. What do you mean? This. You. Me. All of it. I'm not used to people staying. Not past a polite bit. Not past the surface. She looked down at her hand, resting between us. I invited you here thinking I just wanted company. I didn't realize. My heart thudded. Didn't realize what? She glanced at me again, eyes glassy in the dark. That I'd feel like this. That I'd care if you left. The silence between us grew taut, vibrating like a string about to snap. Max, she whispered, you confuse me. You're kind when you don't need to be. You notice things. You listen. My voice cracked. I swallowed. I don't do this for everyone, you know. I know. That's why it scares me. She reached up, brushing a loose thread off my shirt. The movement was slow, almost hesitant, like she was still testing the air between us. I've had so many men walk into my life with promises, she said. But you never promised me anything. And still you're here, making tea, holding me up when I can't walk, sleeping next to me like it's the most normal thing in the world. I reached for her hand. My fingers trembled. I didn't know if it was from fear or longing or both. Sophia, I wasn't just being nice. I wasn't just helping you. She stilled. I took a breath, deeper than I had taken all night. I've felt something for you since the first time I stood at your door, dripping wet, holding a bag of garlic bread you didn't even order. Her laugh was soft. You remember that? How could I not? You looked at me like I was more than a delivery boy, like I mattered. A long pause. Then she whispered, you do matter to me. I moved closer, barely a shift in the sheets, but enough that I could feel the heat of her breath. I kept telling myself this was just some harmless crush, that I was being stupid, falling for someone out of my league. You think I'm out of your league? She said, almost incredulously. I smiled, sheepish. You're a lawyer. You live in Chelsea. You wear jumpers that cost more than my rent. She laughed again. It cracked something in the air, let a little light in. I don't care about any of that, she murmured. I care that you look at me like I'm not broken, like I'm not a mess hiding behind case files and sarcasm. You're not a mess, I said gently. You're brilliant and sharp and funny in this really dry, clever way. You make me feel steady, seen. Her thumb brushed my knuckles. My heart was beating so fast, I thought it might drown out the words. I want to kiss you, I said, barely a whisper, but I don't want to ruin anything. She leaned in just slightly. What if you don't? I blinked. Don't what? She tilted her head. Don't ruin it. Her breath tickled my lips. And for a moment, we hovered there, like the world had gone still just for us. No expectations. No pretense. Just two people who'd spent so long pretending not to feel something that now, feeling it felt like the most honest thing in the world. Then she closed the gap. Her lips touched mine like a question, tentative, gentle. I answered without words, leaning in, threading my fingers into her hair. The kiss deepened slowly. There was no rush, just warmth and trust and the overwhelming relief of not having to hold in anymore. When we broke apart, she didn't move far. Her forehead rested against mine. Well, she said softly, that changes things. I smiled, hopefully for the better. She ran her thumb across my cheek. Definitely for the better. We stayed like that, tangled up in each other. The Juve cocooned around us like we'd built our own little world. Her hands settled on my chest, fingers drumming lightly, like she was grounding herself. I've never done this before, she admitted. Let someone in. Let myself feel it. I kissed her knuckles. Me neither. Not like this. And I meant it. Every word. This wasn't about lust or chance or one good weekend. This was about the way she looked at me like I was worth something. About how she opened up when I never expected her to. About the way I felt more myself when I was with her than I ever had back in my flat, watching telly alone. The fear was still there, of what came next, of what this meant when we got back to London. But it didn't matter, not now. What mattered was that, in this small Norfolk cottage, in a bed we weren't supposed to share, we had stopped pretending. We had chosen to be honest, to be close, to begin something. The morning light filtered in gently through the cottage window, spilling across the bed like a secret finally shared. She was still asleep beside me, her fingers resting on my arm like she'd fallen asleep mid-thought, mid-touch, unwilling to let go. I couldn't stop looking at her. Something about the way her lips curled faintly in sleep, the softness of her breath, the familiar scent of her lavender shampoo on the pillow, it all felt real. Like the life I'd been tiptoeing around had suddenly wrapped itself around me and said, "Here, this is what you've been waiting for." I must have shifted a bit because she stirred, eyes blinking open slowly. When her gaze met mine, she didn't flinch or turn away. She smiled. Sleepy, tender. "Morning," she whispered, voice still husky with sleep. "Morning," I murmured. A beat passed, then she said, "So, did that all actually happen? Or did I dream that you admitted you fancied the woman who yells at builders on her lunch break?" I laughed. No dream. I absolutely confessed to fancying the terrifying, brilliant woman who can recite legal clauses faster than I can microwave noodles. She groaned softly and buried her face into my chest. "You really know how to make a girl swoon." We lay there, tangled in duvets and new emotions, the awkwardness I half expected never arriving. Instead, there was ease, comfort, a kind of quiet thrill humming just beneath the surface. "Can I ask something?" she said after a pause, propping herself up on her elbow. "Of course." "Were you scared?" "Last night." I hesitated, then nodded, terrified. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did. So much. Her fingers traced idle circles against my skin. "Same." I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong about what you feel? What if I read too much into every little look and joke and touch? "You weren't wrong," I said gently. "I've been fighting this for weeks. Every time I knocked on your door, I told myself to stop looking at you like that, to stop hoping." She leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to my shoulder. "Well, you can stop fighting now." I turned to face her fully, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "This, whatever this is, we'll figure out, yeah?" She nodded. "I want to, even if it's messy, even if it's not perfect." I smiled. "I mean, we're already off to a romantic start. Pizza boy and posh lawyer. People think we made it up." She smirked. "They'll write a book about us." "The case of the cheesy delivery." I groaned. "Terrible. Absolutely dreadful." We both laughed. The sound filling the small room was something light and hopeful. Later, after tea and a shared bowl of cereal eaten while sitting cross-legged on the floor, we ventured outside. The garden was quiet, still damp from the morning dew. She'd thrown on my hoodie over her leggings, and somehow that sight, her wrapped up in something of mine, made my chest ache in the best way. We sat on the back steps, hands loosely laced between us. "I know it won't be easy," I said eventually. "You've got your world, your work, your pace. I've got, well, bags of dough and garlic sauce." She looked at me sideways, serious now. "You're more than that. Don't you dare reduce yourself to pizza and jokes. You've got heart, patience. You see me." I swallowed the sudden knot in my throat. "It's just, I'm not like the others, you know." "Exactly," she said softly. "That's why I want you." We sat there in that certainty, not needing grand declarations. Just fingers brushing, knees touching, two lives slowly starting to tangle in the quietest, bravest way. "I'll come back to London with you," I said. "We'll go slow, or fast, or however you want it." She smiled. "Let's go real. That's what I want. You and me, figuring it out as we go." I leaned over and kissed her cheek, letting my lips linger a second longer than necessary. She turned her face towards mine, and this time, the kiss wasn't hesitant. It was sure, warm, the kind of kiss that says, "I see you, and I'm staying." 2 weeks later, I found myself standing outside her flat in London, a battered duffel bag at my feet and a takeaway coffee growing cold in my hand. The city buzzed around me, alive with distant sirens and chatter, but all I could hear was the thud of my heart. She hadn't told anyone about us yet, not in her office, not in her building, not even her sister, apparently. I didn't blame her. The shift from whatever we were to whatever we are still felt so fresh, like it might vanish if we looked too closely. And yet, here I was. The intercom buzzed as I pressed a button. Her voice came through, slightly breathless. "Hello. It's me," I said. "Your favorite delivery boy." A pause. Then, "Did you bring extra garlic sauce this time?" I smiled. "No, but I brought my heart in a Tesco bag. Does that count?" Another pause. Then the door clicked open. She met me at the top of the stairs barefoot. Hair messy from what I guess was a chaotic morning of work calls and coffee. And yet she looked more like home than any place I'd ever known. "You came," she said, voice low, like it still surprised her. I said I would. We stood awkwardly for a beat, neither of us sure if a kiss was appropriate in the corridor, or if we should pretend to be roommates for the benefit of nosy neighbors. But then she reached for my bag and slung it over her shoulder like it weighed nothing. "Come on. I cleared a drawer for you." A drawer. That was it. Not some grand gesture. Not a key to the flat or a dramatic speech on a balcony. Just a drawer, emptied of legal pads and old scarves, waiting for my things. And somehow, that meant more than anything. Inside, things felt the same, but different. She left a note on the fridge with a doodle of a pizza, and the words, "In case of emotional emergencies, warm an oven at 180 degrees, and call me immediately." I laughed. "You're ridiculous." "I know," she grinned, "and you're clearly into it." We moved around each other with ease, settling into this strange new rhythm, her correcting legal briefs on the sofa while I cooked noodles, me napping with my head in her lap between her Zoom meetings. Nothing about it was flashy, but it was real. That evening, after we devoured the worst frozen lasagna known to mankind and fought over who had to wash the single fork we seemed to share, we curled up on the floor by the radiator, wine glasses in hand. "Can I ask something?" she said, her eyes tracing the curve of the rim. I nodded. "Are you scared?" I didn't answer straight away. I let the moment breathe. Sometimes, but not because of you, because I've never let myself want this. Not properly. She took my hand, thumb brushing over my knuckles. "Well, I'm scared too, but I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." I didn't know how to respond, so I leaned in and kissed her, slow, certain, warm. A kiss that said, "Yes, me too." We stayed there for hours, talking about little things and big things, the possible awkwardness at her office, my uncertain work schedule, whether we could survive sharing a bathroom. Every problem was met not with fear, but with the same phrase we kept returning to, "We'll figure out." Eventually, she slipped her hand into mine and led me to the bedroom. Not for anything more than rest, just the quiet comfort of falling asleep next to someone who finally, truly saw you. As we lay there in the dark, her fingers curled gently against my chest, she whispered, "You know, there's a joke I never got to tell you that night." "Oh," I murmured. "Go on then. What does a lawyer say when they fall for their pizza guy?" I raised an eyebrow. "What?" "You've stolen a pizza, my heart." I groaned. "That's awful. Absolutely criminal." She giggled, voice muffled by the duvet. "Good. I specialize in criminal law." We laughed ourselves into sleep that night, not from giddy infatuation, but from a joy that came from being fully known and still chosen. And as the morning light crept in again, like it back at the cottage, I turned to her and thought, this is what I've been waiting for. This is where it begins.